On the 23rd of April, OpenAI released ChatGPT version 5.5. Just a few hours later, but the next day in the UK time zone, DeepSeek released version 4.0. DeepSeek v4 had been anticipated for a long time. Many thought it would be released in February around Chinese New Year, or perhaps March, but those rumors proved false. So are these models better than their predecessors? Perhaps they're worse. I don't have all the answers yet, but in this video, we're going to take a look at how well each model can build a simple to-do app using Livewire v4 and Laravel 13. We'll examine the choices they made, as well as how the code was structured, and see how many tokens they used and how much that would cost. We have plenty to look at with these new models, so let's get on with the video. Sophia's tweet about GPT 5.5 says this model can write better code than any model I've used before. It also needs a lot of encouragement. Context has never been more important. If you don't give it strict enough instructions, it will explore. If it finds something wrong, it feels almost impossible to steer back on track. Or just start a new thread instead. Others disagree with me here. Ben Davis, who is a member of Theo's team, for those unaware, thinks this is the best model ever. When it comes to pricing, Theo wrote $5 per million in, $30 per million out. So if you're not familiar with input and output tokens, they are a way of measuring the words you input to the AI and the words the AI outputs to you. In a sense, they are how AI sees and weighs the words you type. I might make a short video explaining the basics of tokenization sometime in the future. So yeah, it's not the best in terms of pricing. It's the same price for input tokens as Opus 4.5 or 4.6 or 4.7, but it's $5 more per output token than these models. It's also worth noting that when it comes to GPT 5.5, it's more efficient at token creation than 5.4, meaning it should be a little bit cheaper in that regard. So that's a bit interesting. The aforementioned member of Theo's team, Ben Davis, wrote 5.5 feelings from my testing over the last few weeks. I hate the name. It's not a 0.1 model jump, nor is it GPT-6 level. But I feel like 5.9 or something would have been more apt, as it doesn't feel like an evolution of the 5 series, rather the precursor to the 6 series. You have to use this thing on low reasoning. High is awesome, it's really powerful, but 99% of tasks don't need it, and it will overthink things and do the GPT overcorrect. Here's a trillions of unit tests for your sign in button thing. If you think you need high, try it on low first. If it can't do it, then bump up. I'm not going to read his whole tweet, but I agree with the part about using low reasoning. If you use high reasoning, it's way more likely to overthink things. Ben seems to think higher of this model than Theo does, but let's see what OpenCode founder Dax has to say. Using GPT 5.5 a bit this morning, it feels a lot more like Claude models where there isn't a huge delay before it starts doing things. It seems minor, but I think this was key in making Claude addictive and work well for the broader market. I agree with that. To be honest, I would sometimes use Opus because it feels better and faster. With GPT 5.4 or Codex 5.3, I could have gone for a walk, and by the time I came back, I would have decent result. But then with Opus, it just felt snappier and it gave a bit more dopamine. So on that end, with GPT 5.5, I do think it will feel more addictive because it is that much quicker. There's probably a video I could make about AI and addiction. You could say AI is a bit like gambling, given that it's all a prediction model. So let me know in the comments if that's something you would like to see a video on. When it comes to DeepSeek v4, Mashable writer Timothy Worth writes, DeepSeek says its newest open model makes great strides in agentic tasks and coding. The company also says DeepSeek v4 is seamlessly integrated with leading AI agents like Claude, OpenCode, and OpenClaw. DeepSeek released benchmark results that indicate the new models achieve similar results as the latest frontier models from OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic. On popular AI leaderboards such as Arena and Artificial Analysis, DeepSeek v4 currently lags behind the top frontier models, though that could change in the days and weeks ahead. I don't think DeepSeek are aiming to beat the latest American frontier models on raw benchmarks. I think they plan to out-optimize them and beat AI for 90% of day-to-day consumer tasks, but that remains to be seen. Next, we're going to look at the benchmarks released by OpenAI. So as you can see, it's improved significantly in most benchmarks, improved somewhat in all of them. I think AI companies are focusing too much on benchmarks though. They tried so hard to do well on benchmarks that they stop meaning anything when it comes to the actual day-to-day performance of the model. Something else to note is the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index. You can see it's quite high up the chart. It's definitely the smartest model I have worked with. I've mostly used it in Laravel application, whereas if you look at Fuse, he's likely mostly used it in JavaScript applications. If I ask it to do a task, it tends to perform as good as 5.4 or better. I usually prefer to use 5.4 though for anything except front-end work. For front-end work, I actually don't think 5.5 is much better. Opus and Gemini are significantly better, so I don't think I would use 5.5 for front-end work either yet. Now I think we should take a look at where DeepSeek is at. So DeepSeek v4 was released just a few hours after OpenAI's latest model, and I think they must have timed that. They must have waited for the right moment to release this model. It has 1.6 trillion parameters and a context length of 1 million. So it should be great at long conversations, but I do tend to find that once you get above a certain context window, they tend to start messing up more. That's just my experience. Maybe other people have had different experience than that. This goes pretty similar to other models like GPT-5.4 and is significantly cheaper as well. Honestly, for some dev tasks, I would just use DeepSeek v4 instead. It's already been added to OpenCode, and they currently have an offer on. So it's $5 for the first month and $10 after that. With OpenCode, you get access to DeepSeek v4, Kimi K2.6, Qwen 2.6, plus a bunch of other models. This isn't sponsored, I just like OpenCode. So that's enough for benchmarks. I do find them interesting, but I also like to look at the actual real-world performance of the model. So I've opened up a project here, and I think we should go ahead in here and ask DeepSeek first. In a new branch named DeepSeek v4, and actually may just need to check the status here. Okay, it's a clean branch, that's great. Build a to-do app using Livewire v4, Tailwind, add some basic features in here. Okay, so just some basic things for now. Add them, delete them, mark them as complete, organize them in projects. And I'm not going to give it anything else. I'm going to use the medium reasoning level. And I just want to see where it goes from here. It's a very basic thing, but I think it's very interesting to see just how it does, as well as the speed. So we will take a look at this. In another one here, I'm going to just open up Codex. Okay. Well, once this is done, I'm just going to have two different branches, so we can just switch between them and compare them instead of having to create 7 different projects. It is currently thinking. I'm going to see what it does here. I'll get back to you once it's done, and I will go over what I think the results are. Alright, after spending 93 pence, it's done. It's using OpenCode. So this is the result. I have not tried it out at all yet. So if I just go ahead and say empty bins as an example, and I click enter, that works. I click completed, that's fine. I can delete it as well, that's great. If I create a project called chores, it adds it, perfect. If I say empty bins in here and then create another one called house, paint walls. So I'm not sure if this is meant to be a button you can click on, but it doesn't seem like it's working. I have not tried this at all. Even if this is not supposed to be something that you can do to view older to-dos, it is clearly not done that, and this isn't the first try. But I think overall this is okay. This is decent work for an AI to just put this up in the first instance, and I imagine I could have chosen Vue or React, and it could probably have done a lot faster and better, because I think it's more familiar with those and there's a lot more information about them on the web. But yeah, overall I think this it's fine. I have no concerns about it. But if we then take a look for DeepSeek here, what code is actually done. So first and foremost, it's done this Livewire Vault component. I'm just gonna minimize this here. I think it's done okay, but it could have split it into multiple components. I know AIs would generally like to just have one large file, which makes sense because I think it's probably more efficient for them to effectively do that. But it's used Flux where possible. I haven't given it access to the pro version, which I have, so it's just used whatever that's available on the free version. It also wrote tests, which really should be expected for a flagship version. Just did one here. Again, it utilizes the factories properly. I think you could probably chain those, so that could be written a bit better, but I've seen many models not really chaining expects in PHP properly. Yeah, I think the other concern I have with DeepSeek was it just seemed to go about a lot and trying a lot of things. It tried for a lot of times just to run tests, and it just didn't do overly well. It took a while before it actually started running the test properly. That could be my local environment being set up because I have multiple versions of PHP installed, which can confuse it for those of you who may not know. Is if you, for example, utilizes multiple versions of PHP, it may be beneficial to just use per PHP so that each version has the right PHP version. Because if I just type in PHP Artisan, in my case, it will complain. But if I say herd PHP Artisan, because I'm using different versions for different projects that hasn't been updated, it will work. So that's something some models will sometimes get confused about a little bit at first, I've noticed working locally. But overall, it's done 178 lines worth of tests. I think that's fine, and they all passes. So if we head into app, they've also created a to-do one here. They've added in title, completed, and that using the fillable attribute instead of utilizing the old way. It also did run Pint, which is really good that it just did that. I didn't ask it to do that. Again, I wanted it to be very easy for it to just go ahead and do its own thing and be a bit creative if it wanted to. I didn't want it to follow strict instructions because I wanted to just see, would it run Pine? Would it do the things that you should just expect a model to do nowadays without asking it to do it? And here, it did also create relationships successfully, and it utilizes has many in both of them and added the type safety, which is pretty neat. The migrations, it did also create that fine here. Now, another option it could have gone with would be for an ID4, which would have allowed it to use the class in here instead. I find that a bit more tidy, but this does work. And for the to-dos items, it also went ahead and did alright. This probably should have been a timestamp in all fairness, if you'd ask me, because then you could see when it was completed instead of just seeing updated at. This is fine though, it works fine, but I would probably have used the timestamp here for sake of simplicity. Layout wise, it went in and modified the sidebar by the looks of it and added in the to-do item here, which is great. Didn't modify the dashboard page, even though there was nothing of interest there. It did alright if you ask me. I don't think this is necessarily the best with having this many lines of code here. I think, a file that's over 200 lines ultimately just becomes more unmaintainable for someone to use. But overall, I think that's the worst concern I have with it for such a simple application. It could have made other mistakes, but I think it's used the framework quite well and done the code decently. And again, it did create the to-dos and the projects migration. But let's take a look at GPT 5.5. I have a bit high expectations for it to do it here, so let's see what happens. Alright, so I'm gonna ask ChatGPT 5.5. Let's see what happens. Just for reference, my usage is 94% left. Let's see how much it burns through. For comparison, DeepSeek used 98,844 tokens, and 10% of the context window was used from that, roughly. So the first thing I think if you notice here, is that I feel like at least it works faster. It should be a lot faster. And I use low reasoning here because medium or high reasoning, I feel like it just ends up overthinking a lot. Even though this is a simple task, I don't think it should need more than low or medium reasoning, but I think low is fine for this. So it uses the artisan commands here to effectively make the test, the pages dashboard, all of these things just fine. So it's already gone ahead and created them. But I'll get back to you guys once I have seen the results of it, and I'll show you my first reactions from it and seeing if it's done good or badly. All right, it's done. Let's see the results. I have got an error here. That's because it's not run the migrations properly. I guess we just need to go migrate and then fresh. There we go. Creating a new user. That's fine. All right, so this is the UI it went with. Let's go ahead. I like that it shows so many items down here. That's a nice little feature. The UI overall, it just looked worse. I'm sorry, but DeepSeek did that way better. It does work fine, I think, though. But I think if you ask me, this whole area should be clickable. It does work with deleting by the looks of it. I can't delete a project. It doesn't show me all of them. It does allow me to create two with the same names. I'm interested to see how that goes. It doesn't have any errors there because it's probably set up the relationships correctly. It didn't create a new page. It just replaced the dashboard page, which was fine in this case. I think that's okay for it to do. But overall, I think the UI, although the features are the same, is a bit worse. And it's written a lot fewer tests. So if I go ahead and say herd PHP artisan test, it passes, that's fine. In here, it does seem to do things all right. It could utilize custom forms in Livewire, but that's fine on that end, really. Passes through the project ID, checks for errors, adds it in. So if I just went ahead and just click add, that's fine. Yeah, errors does show up. That's great after all. It creates a computer property. It also just does one long file, but again, overall, in the long run, it's probably better to split them up to multiple ones. But yeah, it's not changed anything in the layouts page because it didn't add anything to the sidebar in this case. It did add in a projects relationship, which is great. It did create the to-do item, which is great. It had a completed ad, so that seems like it's probably used a date time and is completed, which is actually a bit redundant, if you ask me. It's actually not done the best here, but just a basic to-do app, really. Like, you do not need these two together. You just don't need them together. That's silly. Why would you do that? Well, I think, personally speaking, just have completed ad. We know it's done when it's completed ad. It has a timestamp in the database. You don't need both. It's just such a basic app to build. And this really tells you how well it does by just the patterns and the approach it uses in here. Overall, from a quick glance though, otherwise it looks fine. It did run a lot faster. It took it less than 5 minutes probably to do all of this, whereas I feel like it didn't actually time any of them, but I think open code with DeepSeek took a lot longer. So yeah, if you ask me, when it comes to very simple task like creating a to-do app, but a new project where you want things to be tidy, built nicely and neatly and easy to use and well-structured, maintainable code that the AI has to write. It's an important bit to have nice code written when it's a new project. It seems like it probably just didn't need to have done it like this, and there's probably other issues as well. I don't want to go over all of it, but there's definitely a few issues in here, I think, with having both a completed ad and a boolean. I don't see why it would do that. The UI is a bit worse. I would have expected a bit better UI for such a basic application. I mean, it does work, and It is responsive, but really, I would have expected more from GPT 5.5. DeepSeek seems to have done a bit of a better job. I don't know what everyone else thinks though. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. What's your experience with DeepSeek V4 or GPT 5.5? Are you using 5.4 because of how much token usage it burns through compared to 5.5, or do you think it actually is more efficient to use 5.5? And I'm really curious to hear what everyone thinks about this. Overall, though, I think it's impressed me in some areas, and other areas like this, GPT 5.5 just clearly not impressed me that much as I was expecting.